Hello, good evening, and thanks again for another edition of Ideas Exchange. Today is February 1st, and I believe if you have walked through social media platforms, you will get an idea about the conversations, what is likely to define how deep or how light your pocket will be, because we are waking up to realize announcements that were made that are taking effect. We know utility tariffs have gone up. We also know that petrol prices, I'm talking about fuel, would also be witnessing some adjustments at the fuel pumps across the country. This is coming at a time when many people are still not too sure about how things will be going forward. We all know the economy is in crisis, and we have been forewarned that the times will be difficult in 2023 and perhaps 2024 and the months or years ahead. All these are happening at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty across the country, especially because of the ongoing talks and postponements of the domestic debt exchange program. Now, I'm sharing one of the things I saw on social media which caught my attention and which is informing our conversation today. It's about the increases. You would realize that fuel, water, electricity, the cost of doing business obviously be affected. So you see inflation, we know it was announced last week, 54.1%. Food inflation, we know it's about 59.7%. And then you would also notice that the policy rate has gone up. The policy rate has to do with the rate at which the banks may be borrowing or lending money to you. And then we also know that the cedi to the dollar ratio is now about 13.4, 13.5. And then VAT obviously has been increased and it has taken effect. The e-levy has taken effect. And then it will move on to what has really caught up with people. Effective today, we know electricity tariff is going up by 30%. Water tariff is going up by 8%. LPG is going up by about 22-25%. And of course, diesel will go up, petrol will go up. All these things are happening at a time when many people do not have any pay rise. And for those who work in the public sector who have seen some adjustment in their salaries, the adjustment we have seen today, i.e. tariffs or the lorry fares, which we are told is likely or will be going up in the coming days, will affect the purchasing power that you have. If the cost of doing business go up, it will also affect your purchasing power. So in a nutshell, you and I, who are the average or the ordinary Ghanaian, are left on their own. God will be our protector. Long before today, ends could not meet. They pay you, your salary within a week is gone. Now, it may take days for your salary to be consumed, and those who may help you may be telling you stories. What we have done is to really understand what has brought us this far, because there has been a missed opportunity, an opportunity that saw some level of goodwill that ushered in this current government. But it's missed, and the producers decided to draw your attention to the narratives and what has brought us this far in this short documentary we have called Walking Down the Memory Lane, Our Economy Today.
Once upon a time, there was a country called Ghana. It was struggling under Dumso, a crisis that arose from lack of investment in the power sector. The hydroelectric dams ran dry, and the lack of liquidity at the time to purchase fuel to power the thermal plants, particularly Abuadze, made matters worse. Then Mohammed's administration was described as incompetent, and the public was made to believe in a messiah, an economic wizard whose public lectures boosted his public rating.
The World Bank, the IMF, the ratings agencies, Economist Intelligence Unit, all similarly predicted brighter days ahead for Ghana. After 8 years of NDC government, today our economy is in decline. Where did the brighter days go? The fact is, you cannot achieve brighter days with mismanagement, incompetence.
Expectation was high after the landslide victory in 2016, and the narrative kept the momentum.
When I look at the economic management team, it is quite clearly a fantastic team. Professor Jambafo, Dr. Akotose, Dr. Afriye Akoto, Honorable Alan Chiramanting, Boachi Ejaku, Ken Oforiata, Senior Minister Yao Osafo Mafu. What a solid team. In fact, can anyone remember the NDC economic management team?
But it was not long before critics began to flag the speed. But the president himself was not ready, and that seemed to have become an albatross today, the size of this government.
The really important thing is your capacity to get hold of the machinery and deliver. So at the end of the day, at the end of the 4 years, people of this country will wake up or feel a significant improvement in their lives. There are more jobs available. People are getting better wages. The cost of living is something that is within the reach of ordinary people. I don't think they're going to worry themselves too much about the size of my government.
The public adopted wait and see, and that challenge was taken up.
We're going to pass a law by amending the Public Financial Management Act to limit the fiscal deficit from 2018 going forward to a maximum of the window between 3 and 5% of the GDP. That is the way forward. We've never done this in Ghana, but this demonstrates that the government is very, very committed to keeping fiscal discipline.
Fast forward, persistent calls were ignored. Advice against borrowing was rubbished. In fact, the head of the economic management team was performing wonders per senior minister Yao Osafo Mafo's account.
I would want all of us here to, and on behalf of my colleagues, say a very big thank you to the type of leadership the EMT has enjoyed from Dr. Baumia. A chairman who is so involved.
We're already borrowing up to half of our GDP. Where are the internal resources? How much resources have you generated internally? Why are we still borrowing this much?
After inheriting about 72% of GDP, we are hoping to bring it down slightly, between 70 and 71% of GDP. So we are looking at how we manage the finances to bring down the debt.
And soon, the world will be hit by a crisis. That will be the reason for our predicament.
That we had put in place during the period of rapid growth was sufficiently robust to withstand all the effects of the pandemic. The Obantapa program, the Ghana Cares program, has been about trying to reset the economy, trying to find the resources that are necessary to revive all the key sectors of the economy, and then also to focus on the new, so much projects, but on the new sectors that we want. We want very much to animate our development.
COVID, which today may have been a conduit for gross mismanagement, and a roadmap to the IMF partly did the trick, according to this Member of Parliament Public Accounts Committee.
Let me give you a brief history behind this report. You recall that the minority moved a motion and asked that the COVID-19 expenditures be gone into by Parliament. You know, the motion was shut down. Then, God being so good, the government brought a certain facility some loan.
That 1 billion.
Yes. And wanted us to approve of it. Then we said, nada. To approve of this facility, we will have to receive an audit of the COVID-19 expenditures. So Speaker directed. So the loan had to be stood down. And Speaker directed that the Auditor General conducts a special audit of the COVID. So this was...
So this entire project is an NDC initiative?
Yes! And also because as part of the IMF conditionalities, it became a requirement that for us to be able to even support them in terms of some of the programs, even in Parliament, we demanded that they ask them to produce a special audit of the COVID-19.
You remember this?
Where the inflation was going up, interest rates going up, exchange rate depreciation going up, and growth also coming down. And they had to run to the IMF for a bailout. Wasn't that the case? That was NDC economic management. I want to let you think about one thing. You hear the NDC saying, but the debt level has gone up. Sure, the debt level has gone up, but economic management has not gone down.
We are not going to the IMF. Whatever we do, we are not. The consequences are there. We are a proud nation. We have the resources. We have the capacity. Don't let anybody tell you, like when Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 others.
Today, the nation is grappling with a self-inflicted crisis, which actors were giving a leeway because public pressure was low. That seemed to be different today because it's biting hard, and those who had voices but chose to sit on the fence have woken up from slumber. The domestic debt exchange talks. For postponement indicates government can no longer have its way. But is it because they now want to eat into their pocket? Think about it and reflect. Perhaps these reminders should inform how taxpayers, particularly the middle class, participate in the governance process going forward.
So we've walked down memory lane, and many of you remember many of these short sound bites, that's excerpts of pronouncements made in recent past. And you would notice that the reminders were made available to government to consider several years ago. But that's where we find ourselves. Now, while government is considering a different proposal to be put before the individual bondholders and others who are still opposing the debt exchange program, we want to look at how, whichever way we go, will affect some key sectors of the economy. We already hear that because of the conversations around the DDEP, many banks are already recording losses, and there are fears that some banks may fold up. Yesterday, there was a concern that was raised about the Ghana Amalgamated Trust PLC, which is also developing. And today, we want to look at the energy sector and the financial sector. We are speaking to a research and policy analyst at the Institute of Energy Security, Adam Yakubu, is already on the line. Good evening, Adam, and thanks for making time to speak with us tonight.
Good evening, Eric, and good evening to your listeners.
You're welcome. Even before we start the conversation, I'm receiving some messages, and I want to share one or two with you. We received a message which says, the American Chamber of Commerce in Ghana is urging Parliament and the Ministry of Finance for a downward revision of the excise duty rates to boost investor interest, protect jobs, and ensure constant and steady revenue inflows to government. Another statement is just making reference to, and I'll put it this way, it says that government still does not want to pay people who owe and we don't know how far this will go. And then just that one quick one, let me say good evening to Mr. Abraham Kumsin, who says, I am glued to your set, my appetite is wet, and I wish I could join this program. We'll find time to see if we can talk to you. Now, Adam, first of all, we did a little walk backwards. Now, I'm sure you monitored the brief we put together. What are some of the things that went through your mind as you listened to the responses to the queries at the time?
Yes, so you realize that we have gone through this cycle a number of times. Every now and then we have elections drawing near, we have promises being made, then we go through the elections, governments come in, then we go through a cycle. Because I remember clearly in 2017 when we announced exit from the IMF, the celebrations and the jubilations and the aspirations that everyone had, only for us to go another 5 years down the line and we are back. So it's like you traveling on a journey, you walk 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards. It's more like we are not making progress. And this should send fears to whoever watching, and we keep wondering, are we really making progress as a nation? What is the accounting for it? It's something that everyone would want to know. And we on the energy side are also quite worried because we know where we came from in terms of the energy crisis we experienced. And so when some of these conversations begin to come up, we would be wondering, are we moving towards that again? So on our part, energy people, we are relatively concerned and we are monitoring closely how government handles this whole IMF program, the debt exchange program, and its replica effects on other aspects of the economy, and not just the financial sector, as you have made. The financial sector very critical because of its overall effect on the entire economy. But for us,
it's good to hear
closely.
It's good to hear the opening response. Now, let's narrow in on the topic for tonight. We want to look at the DDE, how government will manage it, the likely impact on the financial sector, and of course, the energy sector. We have already heard some misunderstanding, some confusion, some uncertainty among those in that bracket. We know that the latest Bank of Ghana report suggested that generally there were losses in profit of about 20%. We know OMCs, those in the energy sector, obviously work hand in hand with the financial institutions. I want us to take the conversation one at a time. Today, we know, and you projected, that fuel prices will go up. We knew this at a time when there were assurances that the gold for oil barter policy was going to cushion us. It seems it hasn't happened. Today I've heard the Deputy Energy Minister saying it will happen as we move along.
Yes, so very important, the gold for oil policy program, which was announced by the government, assuring that the gold the reserves we have are going to be exchanged, what we call in the industry as barter trade, for some petroleum products. When it happened at the time, IES and other civil society organizations sounded caution that, look, these are critical sectors we are looking at, the mineral sector and the energy sector. Bringing them together would mean that you do some broader consultation to engage people to think through the policy carefully. But it seems government was very strong on its position. The engagement is so narrow. Until date, as we speak, as of tonight, we still don't have the agreement, the contract agreement that the 41,000 metric tons that first came in. We don't have it. So how do you tell the effect or the intent of government? Government could mean well, but over the years, we've realized that anytime we have a policy that is not well consulted and well engaged, we hit a rock in the end, and we are forced to come back to do what we should have done at the beginning. So this, we don't have the details of the policy. But what we know for sure is that the price at which government bought 41,000 metric tons for $40 million was at a premium to the market at the time. So everyone in the industry was then wondering, what then is the impact we are looking for? Because at the end of the day, the impact of the policy is to see consumers get some respite on the prices of petroleum products at the pump. So that is why in the projections we have for the first pricing window in February, we projected that prices would inch up between 7 and 13%. And anyone who went to the pumps today saw it. Prices of petrol moved from 13 cedis to some 15 cedis. And diesel moved from 15 cedis to close to 16 cedis. And this is a clear reflection of what the market says. So until government makes available the policy for us to understand who are those involved, the actors, how much are we trading the gold, how much are we being charged for the petroleum products. One thing we know for sure, on the international market, the prices are uniform. You can tell the cedi, very crucial, has not been doing so well. And when it was doing well, we all saw that prices were coming down. So clearly, we are not doing something about the cedi as well. So these two factors, when you consider them, you realize that consumers should brace themselves because international prices continue to surge, and that has a direct effect on what? On the export prices that we are looking at going forward.
It's good to hear that last comment, which talks about the international price of the commodity. I know that the finished products that we import quarterly, or at least every month, is about $380 million. That's just about the same figure we get from the gold exports. Now, if you look at the consumption rate we have in Ghana today, and you look at the projections that you just referred to, there is every indication that things will be worse.
Yes, clearly, from what we are looking at, there are indications that things wouldn't go well. But our fear is that we don't get to a stage where we hit shortages at the pump. Because the goal for oil policy is indirectly introducing government into the market. Would government be able to get gold to that tune? Because buying the gold in cities means government should have money to be able to finance PMMC to do the purchase. And also remember that these golds are mined by private companies. Government would put together a law to regulate how much they sell to the policy. But don't forget that international prices of gold are also known. So if the policy is not well thought through and the prices happen to go up on the international market, what we'll have is that you would likely have smuggling of gold because people would want to smuggle it out, and that would also cripple the policy.
Let's look at this thing. I know ASEP, IES, you've raised a number of concerns about this gold for oil butter policy. What we know is that the oil marketing companies depend on dollars to import the commodity. And Bank of Ghana had a policy to cushion them, i.e. The dollar-cedi ratio, to at least make it a bit comfortable for them to bring the product so that the cedi wouldn't have so much impact on the imports to help you and I who are ordinary consumers. How do you relate the gold for oil butter agreement or the deal with the existing policy and the positioning of OMCs?
Yes. So when you look at the Bank of Ghana's position, initially when we met with the MPA and they were giving us their review for 2022, they indicated that the Bank of Ghana had reviewed how much of forex it makes available to the OMCs. That clearly made it difficult for OMCs to access forex. But the Bank of Ghana, we were thinking, could also look at it from another angle. We have a total reserve of forex. How much do we have? And how much can we allocate specifically to the oil sector? Because we know how much we need at the end of the month. You mentioned it clearly, $380 million, $400 million. What is the total reserve inflow of forex then the Bank of Ghana can make that available to OMCs. When they make that available to OMCs, it makes it relatively easier for the OMCs instead of going through this, going into the market to search for the dollar. When that happens, that also puts pressure on the cedi, and you see that the price of the dollar keeps rocketing, and that would eventually translate into price. So the Bank of Ghana's position, and even the PMMC coming together, PMMC over the years has not really been well positioned to manage its activities of minerals, and that is why you have private companies coming in. So what has changed in the administration of PMMC that we think they can now manage a program such as this? So the policy is so crucial that we think the Bank of Ghana, the PMMC, and the government at large to further consult and also open up the policy. It's not a newly wedded woman where we put in a room. It's a public document. It should be out there for people to think through it. When we think through, that's how we can get the best for the citizen.
Interesting. If you look at the documentary we showed, we simply reiterated what appeared to be government's position or reluctance to compromise or listen to advice. And so repeatedly, they kept assuring the public of what they can do, maybe believing in themselves, which has brought us where we are. We know that the minority have raised several questions. Recently, when the former president was addressing Chatham House in the UK, he also added his voice to calls for a relook at this particular policy. Now, government seems not to be listening and is bent on going forward with what it wants to do. What do you suspect could be the reason why government doesn't want to open up?
Government ought to open up because it is public administration, and we believe that we operate a transparent regime, that when you mean well for the people, you involve them. And what we've seen with the gold for oil policy, we fear it shouldn't be a replica of what we are in the debt exchange program. We can't always implement policies only to consult after the policy has failed. That is why we have consultations before the policy gets implemented. So we are taken aback that a government that is so in a democratic state such as ours, we still have to call, or we still have to chase government to get documents, to get policy statements. What is the essence of a policy document if the public cannot contribute to it? Then there's no need to have a democracy. We operate a democratic state, and we think that policies, programs, projects should be some transparent enough so that it just sends away fears, because government could mean well, but because of the shrouded secrecy in which this is involved, it creates conjecture. It creates assumption. It gives people room to think that you have something to hide. And I don't want to believe that the government will want to hide something. So if the government does not want to hide anything, the policy should be made available. Then we think through it. And we think we share ideas, because experience of the policy in other countries has not been very good. And so we fear that we may repeat some of the mistakes some of these countries in the past.
Conversation among your partners, OMCs, other people involved in the business. What has been the conversation, i.e. gold for oil, butter policy, and how government is managing the whole process?
The conversation has relatively been quite slow, because this is an industry that is relatively very transparent, and it operates on market activity. So government involvement is just a way to cushion, just like introducing a subsidy or a tax into the whole system. So the OMCs and the BDCs are watching closely, and we expect that, well, government means well, but if you mean well and you don't let us give us that assurance of involvement, of participation, then we will have room to question. So we are also taking our back, and we are also holding our fingers crossed and hoping that before we receive the second tranche of the gold for oil, the policy or the contract agreement. Because let me raise something. Procurement processes are involved. The gold, who is taking the gold, we need to know. Which countries are going to buy it or where it's going to be sold. And the petroleum products, where is it coming from? Who are those involved? Because these are very crucial and very important information that actors within the sector should know. Because if we go around, then go involve some people, later then there's a problem, who do we blame? So that is why we are so serious, and we are calling on the publicization of this particular policy. Yes, the government could intend well, but consultation would make us have the best out of the policy.
Let's look at the last leg of the conversation I want to have with you. Many of the OMCs, BDCs work closely with the financial institutions. The debt exchange program obviously will have some toll on these institutions. So we are already aware they are experiencing it. How does this correlate to the business in which you closely monitor?
Yeah, so the BDCs and OMCs always borrow money or take what we call letters of credit from financial institutions to be able to pay for these products. So if the financial sector or debt exchange program is not handled carefully, affecting the activities of financial services or financial activities, the ripple effect could be that OMCs would find it difficult to, BDCs would find it difficult to even access the credit to be able to purchase. Like I mentioned earlier, then we are likely to hit the situation of shortages of the product on the market. And so the whole management of our IMF program and the debt restructuring and whatever should be carefully and exhaustive, involving looking at its effects on all sectors, not just on individuals, not just on some other business, but the entire economic chain, so that one decision here does not end up affecting negatively another sector. And the energy sector, as we know, is very critical. If we should hit what we fear, then everyone knows where we would be heading. In this current crisis we find ourselves, we don't want to even get it wet, because if the lights begin to go off, the pumps begin to short fuel, then we would even be in for more trouble than we have now.
Is it imminent?
For now, we don't want to be doom-stoppers, but we shouldn't give room for that to happen.
Now, before you go, we know the Finance Ministry tomorrow will publish the revised memo on what they consider may be appropriate or acceptable by the individual bondholders, just to conclude the ongoing negotiations. Next week, by this time, government would have been wrapping up to tell Ghanaians that at least finally they've brought finality to the ongoing negotiations. What are your own expectations, and what would you expect that is done to change the narrative?
So what I expect at the end of the day is that the concerns raised by some bondholders be really considered, and at the end of the day, there's some consensus built, and when the consensus is built, it gives the IMF that assurance to be able to give us the money or to extend the credit. But if that consensus is still not built, then I fear that we will have to go through, because this is about the third time government has to adjust the date or to prolong it, and that it doesn't send a good signal to the investor community out there. So I would have expected that the consultation be exhaustive enough. All parties, even though you can't meet all demands, at least people should be satisfied that some compromises have been made on the part of government, because that was one of the key arguments of the bondholders. You are asking them to sacrifice, but they are not seeing government make that same sacrifice. And the sacrifices, according to the bondholders, that government looks at government expenditure and looking at it, they could save some 50%. of fiscal space so that government can access. But if government is asking citizens or investors to sacrifice, and the investor is not seeing you make same commitment, the sacrifice, definitely you wouldn't get a conclusion on whatever propositions you are making. But I hope that this particular round, we wouldn't have to go through another fourth round of negotiations on this debt exchange program.
Adams Yakubu, thanks very much for the optimism and for the conversation tonight. Adams Yakubu is a research and policy analyst at the Institute of Energy Security. We'll be taking a break. When we come back, Dr. Nene Adams Asafo-Akyɛ is a financial economist and a lecturer at the Graduate School of the University of Professional Studies here in Accra. Would also be joining us to share his views on the DDEP, where we are, expectations of what government is likely to put together in its memo, taking into consideration requests by the individual bondholders and what it means to you and I. We'll be back.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. Natural mineral water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. This is Ideas Exchange on TVXYZ. Our topic tonight is Ghana at Crossroads, Impact on the Energy and Financial Sectors. I have Dr. Nene Adams Asafo-Akyɛ. He's a financial economist and a lecturer at UPSA Graduate School. Good evening and thanks for your time, sir. Doc, good evening. If you can hear me, I want to hear your response.
Good evening.
Right. I'm sure you have followed the conversation with Adam Yakubu. What are your takeaways first?
Right. Good evening to you. Good evening to your cherished viewers. My initial, takeaway is that number one, that we have had concern already regarding the, gold for oil program. When the first tranche came out, and as he said, if you compare the world market price to the amount that we were told that we paid for it, it was worrying. Because initially when that thing came out, of course, I was worried about the level of, engagement that went into that and the economics behind it and how sustainable that is going to be. However, I was of the view that if that is going to function well, then we should be able to negotiate with these dealers or suppliers to, do the barter trading at even a discount of world market price, so that we will see that there is real benefit coming in. But unfortunately, it did not go that way. How much we are paying for is even way higher than the world market price, and that's a concern. And when that happens, what it means is that the product, the final product that we'll be getting on our market here will come at a premium. Therefore, we see things like increment in prices, export price and all of that, as we've seen, taking effect this month. And so these are really serious concerns.
And obviously, when a country like ours is in distress and is going to the Bretton Woods institutions, they will not expect that they will close or shut their doors and only help us when we knock. They will closely be monitoring conversations, discussions, negotiations here to inform how they respond to whatever we send to their table for consideration. It appears almost every move is shrouded in secrecy. Gold for oil butter policy. Yesterday, the MP for Boku Central, Mahama Yariga, issued a statement raising concern and suspicion about the involvement of the Ghana Amalgamated Trust PLC. And that is also certain somewhere. Even the negotiations with the people who will be affected by the debt exchange program, government is not bringing all of them on board, but engaging them in silos. What do you think this suspicion is sending to those who may help us after all?
Well, there's one thing that we should know, that the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and all the multilateral institutions watch everything that we do as a country. Whether we are doing well or we are not doing well, they are watching us. And in fact, at this moment in time, they are even doing so more closely. Unfortunately, it is the case that since 2017, the way of management, the way that the current government is managing the economy is shrouded in huge levels of secrecy. And that is a concern. We have had situation of the financial sector cleanup. And what happened there is a matter that will have to be discussed in more detail. We don't know how it was done, and a certain amount of money was voted for a cleanup, for an exercise that is way below that. And then we came down to COVID. COVID report just came out, and unfortunately, it stinks like hell sulfur. And so a lot of the time, we are expressing concern about the opaqueness, the secrecy with which government transacts business. And they are watching. The concerns raised by Honorable Ayariga, sending a letter to the governor of Bank of Ghana, there are issues that we have talked about, and as if, it's just a propaganda or maybe some form of, somebody's making. But they are real issues. You remember somewhere along the line, they were talking of, something like debt swap and all of those things. So we'll be sitting down, and then before we realize, people have taken over our state institutions because they have bought debt of those, government has swapped the debt, their investment with debt, their investment with us as share in those companies. And then they are taking charge of affairs. And so these are very serious concerns. I believe, I hope that we will try to turn on a new leaf. Otherwise, it's not going to help us.
Now, I had a conversation with the MP for South Dai, Roxanne Dafamapo, who referenced the additional pressure that came from the IMF that saw the special audit into the COVID-19 expenses. It was part of the playback of the Down Memory Lane documentary we shared on this particular program. Just a few days ago, the World Bank also issued some caution note to the Bank of Ghana as to how it was involving itself in the day-to-day financial administration of this country with support to government. Now, in Mahama Yariga's letter, or the petition that was sent to the Attorney General and the Bank of Ghana, he also copied the World Bank. At this stage, that government doesn't want to listen, but appears to be bowing to pressure because we may be getting something from those sources, i.e. IMF. Should we be expecting that they now will be helping us to get government to listen, or we keep crying and hope that maybe when they hit the rock, they may come back to us?
Well, the point is that IMF, World Bank would not want to be seen as, excessively interfering in affairs of governance, in this country. They would want to issue little bits of cautions here and there, but then they want to do so with caution, as the case may be. The letter sent to the governor and copied the World Bank or the IMF is a matter of formality to let them know that, well, we are aware of these things, and please, if there's any way you can help. We have said severally that the Bank of Ghana intervention or role in, supporting government activities is unacceptable, to the extent that over 50 billion cedis have been printed without any basis. And if these things come to hit us, we tend to say, we don't know what is happening. No, we know. We are printing currencies, money, and thinking that it will not affect us. It does not go that way. And then also, let us recommend, or if you like, commend, I should say, Parliament for pushing for this audit report. I would prefer an external body to do a forensic audit of not only the COVID funds, but also the entire financial sector cleanup, a proper forensic audit, because I think that there's too much laxity. There's too much, I want to do it the way I want to do it in a system, and that cannot help us.
Okay, so Doc, just in 1 minute, what does it mean to me, an ordinary Ghanaian who doesn't have any investment or any kind of money in a bond form which will be affected? But here I am, a poor person, I don't even have savings. But at the end of the day, all these things will affect the economy to a larger extent. What does it mean to me, and what should I be preparing to brace?
Well, whether you have savings in a bank or you don't, whether you have money in your pocket or you don't, this process is going to impact you. It's going to affect you. I have said that it is something that is going to affect even future generations, because we are talking of 10, 15, 20 years of negative impact that we cannot properly quantify it. And so if you sit around and you say, oh, I don't have any investment, I mean, I'm a poor person, I don't even care what is happening, and so therefore let it be. No, it is going to affect you. So for instance, let's say that you used to, in a way, manage your as somebody would say, papa, and get some few cedis to buy your kenke and, buy your foodstuff and prepare your food and have your daily living. You pay for water. You pay for electricity. You pay for other services. Those services are going to go up. Now, what actually is going to happen is that at the end of the day, your little hustle to bring you a certain level of income, that income will be dropping, will be shrinking, will be reducing. Meanwhile, your basic needs, that is your cost of living, will continue to go up. So you will see yourself, getting trapped, struggling to be able to, even keep up with your daily living. So,
okay. All right, Doc.
Yes.
I want to say thank you very much, because I've seen, or I'm told, our phone lines are beeping. So I'll spend the rest of the minutes left on this program to hear ordinary Ghanaians and what they also have to say. So you can just keep following this conversation till we wrap up. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Right, so at this stage, you can call us. We have about 10 minutes to wrap up. The issues are real. Today, we know fuel prices have gone up between 7 and 13%. We are back at the levels we were just before the Ghana reached an agreement with the IMF, what they call staff level agreement. We saw a downward trend. The cedi was dropping. There was a lot of hope. Petrol is now selling over 15 cedis at the pump price per liter. That's over 80 cedis per gallon, if my mathematics is right. And that's serious. Water tariffs are up by 8%, electricity 30%. And these are basic things that have become part of our lives. Many of us depend on electricity and water for everything we do. So if you cannot afford electricity at an increased rate of 30%, you will have your own self-inflicted doomsday in your house. Not because the power is not available, but just because you cannot afford. That is the reality. As we speak, the policy rate has been increased to 28%, which means lending rates will go high. If business want to go for loans, they will pay more, and that will be translated into the cost of the item you are going to buy. Let's hear who has joined us first on the line. Good evening, and thanks for your time again.
Good evening.
Yes, this TVXYZ Ideas Exchange. Tell us where you called from and be brief.
Yeah, I'm calling from Kumasi.
Yes, go ahead. Your line is faint. If you can be brief, 30 seconds, I'll be grateful.
Yeah, I've gone a bit further from the team. Can you get me clear?
Yes, go ahead. We'll manage it.
Okay, I'm calling Jumano. I'm calling from Kumasi. I think what is going on at the moment in the country. Let me go out from the team.
Okay, so yeah, I can hear you, sir. I can see the determination to make your point. Go ahead, sir.
Will you get me clear?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm called Jumano from Kumasi. I think what is going on in the country at the moment is disturbing everybody. And I think the government has made himself that he doesn't want to listen to whatever we Ghanaians are saying. He doesn't feel the pain that we are going through. That is why he doesn't want to listen to us.
Okay.
So I think we have the men. You see where the men are taking us to.
All right.
We want President Akufo-Addo all the best, and he should continue this way. If it's good for him, he should continue this way. Thank you very much.
I can see from your tone that you are speaking proverbially as a signal to him. Thank you very much for your time. Let's speak to somebody else on the line. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, make your point quickly.
I'm speaking from the Manasitma, the center.
Right.
Ghana is heading towards a very bad situation. And if you don't take care by July or March, Ghana will collapse. So, talk to God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm so grateful you made it very brief. Let's pick 2 more or 3 more calls. I think we have about 7 minutes to wrap up. If somebody is on the line, let's speak to you at this time. Good evening.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. In fact, this government, what he's doing now, we've never seen it before. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
What this Akufo-Addo government is doing, we've never seen such thing before.
So why do you think government appears to be doing its own thing and they don't care? What do you think is the reason?
The reason is most of us are illiterate. We don't understand the issues on ground. Hello?
I can hear you. Go.
Yeah. Just now that I'm listening to this program, I've understood all what you are saying because I'm literate. But most of us are illiterate. So they don't understand the issues on ground. Hello?
For your point. Yes. It's interesting to hear the argument from this perspective. I would rather suggest that a lot of people are ignorant or vulnerable, and so they are being exploited. And so some may be illiterate, but they are well informed because they follow conversations. And so I understand the perspective you are driving the conversation, and thanks for the time. I think the lines are not too clear, but let's see if we can pick one more because it looks like it's a bit brushy. The producers, if you can. Yeah, good evening. Thanks for your time. Speak, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I am Old Winter. I'm calling from Bole. Yes, sir. You can see that at this time, the way this government has used its trick, they put something in the left of citizens and take it from the right hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to assure them that the way they are doing to civil servants and other workers in this country, they should bear in mind that the 2024 elections is here. But apart from that, Keno Foriata is ruling Ghana as if it's his own company. How do you commit, how will I call it? Even how do you cause a mess? Then you'll be expecting somebody who is not part of that mess to help you in pain, and you are using force. Like going into people's bonds, forcing them as if they are kids. Even if Ghana is your property and
is it not fair, say, that after one or two attempts, they have formed a committee to discuss what could be the way forward, and as we speak tomorrow, government will be issuing a memo on its revised position on how it wants to handle individual bondholders, for example?
My brother, you know, Ghana is not broke. We have monies with the MPP people. Why can't they take the money from them? Look at what is happening at the public sector. Look at the monies that are kept there. They should go and take those money.
You are talking about the Auditor General's report.
Report, yes. They should go and take those monies and leave the bondholders to be free.
Okay.
Because what they are doing today will affect even these rural banks that we have.
All right. I wish I could engage you more. Let me see if I can pick one more person, and then we wrap up the show. But thanks, and say hi to everybody in Bole. I'm told there's nobody else on the line. If I check my time, it's almost 2-3 minutes to the top of the hour. That's how we want to wrap up on Ideas Exchange tonight. My guests were Dr. Nene Adams Asafwache. He's a financial economist and lecturer at UPSA who spoke to us just a few minutes ago by phone. And Adam Yakubu is a research fellow at the Institute of Energy Security. He walked us through how this is likely to impact on the energy sector, and he raised concerns about what appeared to be secrecy that has shrouded negotiations associated with the gold for oil butter policy, and the fear that if OMCs do not find it right, or BDCs do not find it right because financial institutions will equally be affected, Ghana could grind to a halt because we could be lining up or queuing to buy fuel, and that could even be worse because we may go back to the doomsday days because Ghana may not have enough to fuel our turbines. That's how we want to add our voice to the ongoing conversations on the debt exchange program and what people expect from government. This program will come your way again next week, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Thanks and good night.